Who are your partner, friends, family having a relationship with? Right now, I feel called to jump on and talk about existentialism and talk about the self, all right? And how very often or sometimes we are not sure necessarily of ourselves and what the self is. And a question that I found incredibly sort of mind blowing is, who is your partner, friends, and family having a relationship with? Because when you self is, others might have a relationship with a hope, an expectation, a mask, an assumption. If it's not the self that they are having a relationship with when they're with you, who are you? Like, what is the connection point? There's not going to be a connection point if you only sort of know of yourself as an assumption, or you don't have a coherent self. You don't have coherent beliefs or consistent ways of thinking and being across a longer period of time, right? And that makes it harder to relate to people or to build relationships with others. Now, I think that when we're talking about the self, there's no such thing as discovering yourself, I think. The self is more so, I would say, uncovered and revealed, often through grieving and basically coming to forgiveness. And what I've come to realize too is that a lot of unforgiveness is unconscious, is subconscious. We tend to think, no, I don't have anyone to forgive. I don't have anything about myself to forgive. And when we go in this sort of amnesia of unforgiveness, then what tends to happen is that we experience a sense of self-loss gradually. Because if we don't stay on top of sort of these suppressed or repressed emotions in our bodies, then we get dissociated from ourselves, from the self. And when we don't take the time to grieve self loss and who we, let's say, didn't end up being, or grieving something that we didn't achieve, or grieve old dreams that didn't come to fruition when we're entering a new season in our life, or when we're entering a new relationship, or when we're entering a new career or job or study path, or we're just called into a new territory. If we don't take the time in the sort of day to day to really process our emotions, then it's going to accumulate, right? It's going to accumulate across time. Hello, hello. Great to see you join in. So it's important that we take the time to really sit with ourselves, sit with the existentialism of life, of like, who am I even sitting with right now, right? When you sit with yourself, sometimes you don't even know who you are and what you're sitting with. You're sitting with a collection of maybe new beliefs that are not fully integrated yet. Maybe you sit with new dreams that are not fully like in alignment or fully embodied yet. Maybe you're sitting with grief over something that you don't know how to fully process, or if you're ready to process it yet, you're not really sure whether to let go of something or to hold on to it and nourish it further. Maybe you sit with a collection of thoughts that you don't know how to deal with, or you're not sure if they're true, or whether you're going to continue going down that train of thought, right? So I think that being able to notice that sometimes you sit with yourself and you don't even know what the self is. that in and of itself is where you meet self-acceptance, or the opportunity to accept that there's a sense of existentialism that we're coming up against here. We're coming up against the fact that we are not necessarily just a self, we're just existing. And it takes away the pressure, I think, that you have to be someone all the time, that you have to be coherent all the time, that you have to have this flawless, understandable identity all the time, that you can communicate clearly to other people and even to yourself. And it allows you to kind of come more into a state of being in what is, and to process the emotions that are with you in the right here and right now. So this is what I've been like contemplating on for the past weeks, really, and months, where it's just I've just had an increased sense of enthusiasm and curiosity about existentialism, and I think that has come from my own sense of suppressed and repressed emotions that I hadn't fully like gotten in touch with. My own sense of unforgiveness towards myself and towards some people in my past that I hadn't fully gotten in touch with. And there's not necessarily something bad with that. It's more that it wasn't the time back then, but now, as you are becoming more aware of it, and as I've become more aware of it, it's as if it's become easier and easier to handle and sit with, right? Because here's the thing: the subconscious mind and God, I believe, is not going to get something up to be processed before your conscious mind can handle it. Does that make sense? Like yourself cannot handle all of the suppressed and repressed emotions and things that we go through, and new experiences and new stimuli. We can't handle all of that coming up all of the time, all at once. So it happens in drips, like rain, like raindrops, right? A little bit by little bit by little bit. And we're little by little being washed. But then we also accumulate more and more new memories and experiences. And that's the thing, that's existence. We can't escape this. It's a continual process of forgiveness and self-loss, and facing that, and also self-love in the same process. And I think that what's changed in my path, though, in my life, is that, and one of the main things that's shifted, that's also really caused this, I think, is that I've, come to Christ, or Christ has really come and activated in me. And this has caused a tremendous shift in identity, okay? Because what that does is that it changes how you relate to reality, how you relate to people, how you relate to commitments, how you relate to relationships, how you relate to your thoughts. Obviously, it's a faith. It's more of like discipline, yeah. And for that, and the thing here is, how I see it is that it happens first in the spirit, and then it takes time for it to settle into the body. And for it to settle fully into the body, there has to be certain processes, emotional processes, and yeah, like forgiveness and grieving and letting go of the previous version of self, right? There has to be a sense of grieving of that which was, in order for there to be space for that which is to come to be. And that is definitely what I've been growing through. And I hope that, and I know that there are people out there, even you, that might be going through the same thing, that are growing through the same thing, where you don't necessarily know how to pinpoint what your self is, but you do know that you're being grown right now. And maybe you don't know what you're being grown into, but in that process, I just want to encourage to take the breather, to take a moment to sit with that which is, even if it's not fully understandable to you what your self is, what your new collection of thoughts, behaviors, and identity is now, and that is okay. And I think that in an increasingly complex world, and I think this is also important to mention, that when you grow wiser, when you grow older, we have the capacity to perceive more complexity. Okay, it's not necessarily that the world gets more complex. It's more that as our brain, as our neurons, as our body grows older, we have the capacity to perceive more complexity, which sometimes also makes it harder for us to define what we are or who we are being. It makes it even harder sometimes to make decisions because, well, you can perceive that there's multiple options and that there's not necessarily one right path, that there can be several paths that still lead to righteousness, right? That still lead to some place where you could be fulfilled. And that sometimes can lead us into paralysis by analysis, right? Or whatever it's called. And it can lead you into a state of confusion about the self. It can lead you into a state of meeting with existentialism, which definitely is the case for me several times in my life anyways, and it might be for you too. Anyways, that is what wanted to come through right now, what's been on my heart and my mind, and it might be that it can add some value to you in where you're at in your life. So just contemplate this question: who are your partner, friends, family having a relationship with? If it's not with the self, is it a hope? Is it an assumption? Is it an expectation? What is it? And are you able to stand in the beingness of what is, what they are in a relationship with, and be able to communicate that to someone? Be like, it might be hard for me to have a relationship right now because I'm not fully coherent in a self right now. I'm growing through a waiting season. I'm growing through a season of self-discovery or something along those lines. It's important to communicate that. You can still be in a relationship. You can still have friends. You can still have family. But are you able to communicate that to other people? That is your experience. That is your existence right now.